back to the old fave of carrot cake. And gonna watch a Kayla Rose Kateki, who I am loving at the moment. Her Tabitha and Follow the Intuition are just awesome. Maybe it's my stage or something, but I'm really liking watching recovered people and seeing it from like the what I'm aiming towards side, and yeah, that's really helping me at the moment. It's actually melting like crazy, but it's still so good. That was a very melted carrot cake, but it was delicious. So I wanted to answer a couple of questions that I've got on Instagram. So somebody asked, do you think you could talk about getting out of the body checking mindset mentality of having to do it, of just doing it out of habit? Things like constantly looking in the mirror or a window or things like that. So I've actually had so many people ask about body checking, and I normally respond saying like, oh, I don't actually do it myself, because when I think of body checking, I was thinking of like measuring or like using your hands or like pinching, little like routines, rituals, that kind of thing to check whatever it is you're checking. But then when I spoke to my psychologist about it, she was going into like all the different types of checking, and I was like, whoa, okay, I definitely do these things. Because it's down to things like just looking in the mirror or looking in reflective surfaces, or feeling like, how do our clothes feel on us? How tight or loose do they feel? Things like jewelry, like does my ring still fit the same as before? And then obviously like weighing yourself repeatedly, looking at photos of yourself, and not just like actively taking photos of yourself, like body parts, which I don't do, so I was like, oh, I don't body check, but even just photos on like Instagram, Facebook, general photos that are taken in life, if you're like zoning in on yourself and scrutinizing different body parts, then that's body checking. And it's obviously like not a good thing. Like it becomes a compulsion that you have to check, and that you're like anxious about it, and like this girl says, you get in the habit of doing it and you feel like you need to either like reassure yourself or like prove to yourself something's wrong or whatever. But whatever you're doing, I definitely think it's going to be like feeding into your eating disorder. And basically when we're doing it, like what are you looking for? There's like two things you're looking for really. You're either looking to see, am I as skinny as I want to be, or as I think I am or need to be, whatever. And then on the other side of it, we're checking for like, have I gained weight, or like, have I gotten fat or whatever. So things like, do my jeans or my clothes still fit, or am I under a certain number on a scale? Looking whether your body parts are touching. In my mind, it doesn't matter which one of those two things you're checking for, like skinniness or fatness, it's not going to make you feel good. Because let's say I'm doing a check and I find, yes, I'm as skinny as I want to be, this is great, and maybe I get a buzz from it. The problem with that is you then think, right, I now need to stay this skinny, and how do I do that? I need to restrict. Or on the other side, if you've gained weight, then you feel bad, and so then what you do, again, it will lead you to restrict. So when I was talking to my psychologist, she was like, any form of body checking needs to be changed basically, and it kind of depends on what the body checking is as to like how you need to change it. So there's like one group of body checking which just need to be stopped completely. So anything that's basically abnormal, things like obsessive weighing, measuring yourself, taking photos of certain body parts, pinching or checking routines. One thing I used to do, which is awful, it's such an instrument of torture, was split screen photos. So I take like a picture of me when I was skinnier or bigger or whatever than I am now, and compare the two together. I'd like find two where I'm in a similar pose, and I'd literally torture myself with it, of like, look how much weight you've gained, or oh, I don't know, just yeah, that was horrible. So anything that's abnormal basically needs to be stopped. And I read in this book, like one way of knowing if your checking behaviours are abnormal is, would you be embarrassed if someone else knew you were doing it? And if the answer is yes, then that behaviour just needs to be totally stopped. But then there are some behaviours which we can't stop because they're like part of everyday life. So things like mirrors, there's always going to be mirrors, reflective surfaces, photos as well. And actually my psychologist said here, like, it's really important that you don't try and stop these behaviours, because if you do try and avoid mirrors or any kind of photo, then you've got body avoidance, and then you like build these ideas up in your head of like how big you think you've got, and those thoughts remain unchallenged. So your thoughts can become like really distorted, and you're never realising, oh, they're not actually true, because you're totally avoiding whatever behaviour. So thinking about like mirror checking, for example, she was talking to me about how to modify the behaviour so that you're not obsessively checking and like scrutinising certain body parts, but you're also not avoiding it completely and then building ideas up in your head about how big you are that remain unchallenged because you never look in a mirror to see. Actually, let me go and get my list of like how to use mirrors. I found Stevie lying. She spends most of her time like this. Stevie! As soon as you touch Stevie, she's like really grossed out by it and then tries to clean herself. Okay, here's my list of how to like modify mirror behaviour so that you're not obsessing, but you're not avoiding. So she says I should never be looking in the mirror when I'm naked or getting changed. So just looking when I'm dressed, and she says just look for like a couple of seconds just to check your like clothes and that your hair's okay. And then she says to keep a distance from the mirror and make sure you're looking at your whole body, so you're not like zoning in on certain areas or like scrutinising body parts, which is all so much easier said than done. Like when I look at a mirror, it's so automatic for me to just look at the areas of my body I'm like not happy about or that I'm checking. Not even mirrors, literally anything that reflects. Like in work, when I walk to the toilet, there's a glass door on my way, and I will always just look at it and zone in on little bits. And so it is really hard to stop, but like with any behaviour change in recovery, like it is difficult. You're breaking a habit that you're so used to, and it is automatic, and you've practiced it for so long, and it's uncomfortable to do it at first. And so this girl had asked how I like change my mindset and do break out of the habit. Honestly, I think you just need to do it. Like if it's a behaviour you need to stop, just totally stop it. If it's a behaviour you need to modify, like catch yourself, because you'll automatically go back to your old behaviours and like try and stop what you'd normally do and try and change how you'd normally do it. And like it will make you anxious to either stop or modify your behaviours at first, but like with introducing new foods and everything, like anxiety doesn't last forever. My psychologist says this to me all the time, like anxiety never killed anyone, anxiety doesn't last forever. Like sit with it, tolerate it, try to distract yourself and find other things to do. And yeah, just sit with it, I guess. Like it's a compulsion essentially. Like when I look in a mirror, it's such a habit for me to like look where I'd normally look, and I really do have to keep catching myself and being like, don't do that, stand back, look at your whole body, or look at neutral parts as well. That's what she says, like look at bits like your hands and stuff like that, so you're not scrutinizing, focusing in on little areas. But yeah, honestly, I find it really, really difficult as well to stop, but that is the aim. Like stop behaviours that are abnormal and then modify behaviours that are part of everyday life and that we can't escape. Right, it's so hot out here. I'm just going to go make another cold drink and then I'll come back out and answer another question. Oh, there she is. Oh, Stevie. Okay, another question. Oh, she starts by talking about Tabitha and have I watched her, listened to her? Yes, love Tabitha. And then she says, can I ask, have you ever had or currently have an issue with exercise? I'm struggling to completely stop CrossFit whilst I'm in recovery and need some help and reassurance that it's the right thing to do and I won't get fat or unfit. Okay, so I've not had a huge exercise problem with my eating disorder. Last year when I was living in New York, I got a bit too into the gym. And so then when I started seeing my psychologist, I just cut it out basically, because I was like, I could see myself getting obsessed with it, and I was like, I really don't need another problem to have to quit, if you know what I mean. I kind of thought these things are much easier to stop before you start them properly. So yeah, so that's me. But this fear of like getting fat or unfit if you stop, I do get that, and I can see parallels with restriction as well, because I think when you start eating again, you worry weirdly that you're going to like lose your ability to restrict. I kind of panic that I'm gonna like break my willpower. So if I start introducing foods, I'll never be able to stop eating these foods. Almost like you become reliant on them or dependent. And I imagine a similarity with exercise, like you worry that if you stop, you'll get too used to not exercising and you'll never want to go back to it. Or like this girl said, you'll lose your level of fitness and then you won't be able to get back into it. And probably the common thing between both of them is your worry that like if you stop restricting or if you stop exercising and you do lose this willpower or ability to do it, that then you'll just keep gaining weight and that you'll never exercise again and that you'll just keep eating for the rest of your life and you'll just keep gaining and gaining and gaining weight and balloon up and I don't know. So yeah, I wouldn't say I've had this huge problem with exercise, but just thinking through this fear of like losing the ability to make yourself go and exercise like crazy. That's kind of the idea. Which sounds really scary, but like think about it, like that is the aim, is that we do break this obsessive and compulsive need to over exercise or to restrict our food. Like we can't say, oh, I want to get better and get all of this gone, but I still want to hold on to it. Like I want to be able to freely eat and have carrot cake, but I still want to be able to restrict when I want to. Or I want to be able to not exercise and not be compelled after I eat to go and burn it off, but at the same time I don't want to cut back on my exercise, or I don't want to stop doing CrossFit. It's kind of like we want our cake and eating it. Like we want all of this obsession and compulsion and torture gone from our lives, but because we've still got it, we're so scared to let it go that we want it gone, but we don't want to let it go. And obviously I'm not a doctor or a professional here, but just in my recovery, to get to that place where I don't feel compelled to like exercise or restrict anymore, I've just had to cut it out and just stop basically. And I know Tabitha as well suggests the same thing. So if you have had issues or do have issues with like compulsive exercise and constant need to move, like Tabitha's amazing on that. She really suffered from like overactivity with her anorexia. So definitely advise listening to her. But yeah, I think to stop the compulsion to restrict or to exercise, you just need to completely stop it. Because as long as you're still doing a little bit, your eating disorder's still got its foot in the door, and it doesn't settle for a little bit. Like it will always want a bit more and want a bit more. And so like personally for me, I don't think I can get to a place of not having these like compulsive behaviours anymore whilst I'm still holding on to them a little bit. So yeah, I've just tried to cut them out completely. And yes, it's scary thinking like, oh, but I'll lose my ability to restrict, or I won't have this willpower to go to the gym every single day or whatever I'd be doing. But like, I do have to remind myself, like, that is actually the aim. That's where I want to be. I do want to be able to eat freely, and I do want to not compulsively exercise. So part of that is breaking it, and maybe I will lose a bit of my ability to do it. But yeah, you can't be well and ill at the same time. And then on the CrossFit thing, I've never done it, but I've got mates who do it. And just from what I know about it, I think it can be a big part of your like identity, and like your friends that you hang out with are at CrossFit, and it takes up so much of your time and thought and effort and blah, blah, blah. Like it's just a big part of who you are. So I can imagine that's another worry around giving these kinds of things up, and like maybe losing friends as well if your circle of friends are at the gym. But like, again, who do you want to be? Like, are you still wanting to be recovered but in the same life that you've been living? Like, it probably doesn't work. If you're trying to like break away from these behaviours that were keeping you trapped in like a miserable, restricted little life, then maybe it isn't the best thing to be like hanging out with people that still do it, or following them on social media, or going to CrossFit and engaging in CrossFit and being around these people. Like, that is what you're trying to leave behind really, and what's been making you miserable. So yeah, maybe you do need to break away from it. And I don't know, I haven't been part of CrossFit, but actually Kayla Katecki, Damn the Diets, who I was watching, she talks loads about this kind of thing, and she's brilliant. I guess a kind of parallel I could draw to my experience is when I was a teenager, I was kind of in and out of treatment a fair bit. And I found when I was in the kind of hospital environment and surrounded by eating disorders all the time and by underweight people, that kind of became my norm, and I would like compare myself to that, and that was kind of like what I knew of people. It was kind of what I expected people to be like. And then when I left hospital when I was 19, I then went on to university and made a completely new group of friends who were all healthy, good attitudes to like food and drink and having fun basically. And they had very healthy body sizes, and it completely changed my like world and perspective. And it almost like replaced this idea of skinny in my head, and like healthy became my new norm. And so rather than seeing like ill, underweight people every day, I was seeing healthy people who are like eating well and in life. And yeah, it had such a big change on like how I perceive the world and myself. Yeah, I think it kind of resets your expectations and like your attitudes to food or exercise or whatever, and also just to like having fun in life and that sort of thing. Like, I think who we hang around with and follow on social media and exercise with or whatever, like it does have a big impact on, I don't know, our like expectations of the world and people, and yeah, what we should be like. So I'm getting absolutely boiling now, so I'm gonna have to go inside, but I hope that helps people, and especially like sharing what my psychologist is doing with me and like teaching me, like, yeah, hopefully it's helpful to other people as well. So lots of love as always, and I hope you're all having a great weekend. Oh, look at this, mixing it up. Hi, pal.